RxJs is a really great library when it comes to reactive programming. We can achieve a lot of complicated things with the help of RxJs. And when it comes to a reactive programming, I don't think there is any better alternative than the RxJs. It is not only very capable, but because of its support for these things, it is also very famous among the developers. So if you don't know about the RxJs, so let me tell you, you are really missing a big part from this ecosystem. So that's why I'm making this video, and in this video I promised you to explain the various concept of the RxJS so that it will make your foundation of the RxJS very strong. So I'm going to explain you the concept of observable, subjects, different types of subjects, why we have different so many types of subject, and which subject fits into which scenario, which one you should use, what are the subscription in all of those, how to use the subscription rightly to avoid the memory leakage. So I promise to explain all this concept, and this video is targeted for the people who just started learning the RxJS, or even though if you don't have any idea about the RxJS. So I'm going to take you to a code and going to explain you things with a live code example, so it's not just a theory. So with that, let's get into our VS Code and see how things work. So let's first start with the observable. What does the observable mean? It is a function that emits a multiple values and it works on a push-pull mechanism. So what is a push-pull mechanism? A consumer of a particular data, it pulls a data. So why I was talking about the push-pull, because the observables are the lazy push collection of the multiple values. They work on a push strategy. They push the values and their consumer has to subscribe. And when a subscription has happened, that value is delivered to its consumer. So observable, it itself pushes those value. I will import the observable from the RxJS, and I'm going to implement a very simple scenario where I want a random number to be generated from the observable, and that random number I just want to show to consumers which are listening to that observable. So I will just create an observable, and this is how you create an observable using a new observable. Previously you could also create observable using a create method, but now with the latest RxJS version, the create method has been deprecated. So let's say I want to emit some data. So with the help of next, we tell observable to emit a data. What I mean by emitting a data, it sets a data to this observable, and it will then push that value to its listeners. So let's say I will create a random number, and that random number I will notify to the listeners of this observable. So when I will subscribe to this, so let's make a first subscription, observable.subscribe, and inside that I will just console log the data that my listener has received from this observable. So this is how we listen to observable. We have to subscribe to observable in order to listen to its data, and when we do a subscription, we get access to that data, and that data we are simply printing here. So let's make another subscription also here, and before that I want to just run this code and show you like how this behaves. So when I run this code, I see that with the observable for first subscription I have received a random number which my observable has correctly created. So now let's try to make another subscription to a same observable. So this time I have made a second subscription which also listen to this observable, and inside that also I'm printing a same value. So now this time if I run the code, I should get a two subscription print lines here. So I see that I got the subscription 1 and the subscription 2, but the thing now here I see is first time I received a random value which was something else, and in the subscription 2 I have received a different value. So this means that whenever any new subscription has happened to this observable, it get executed freshly that time. Every time a new subscription has happened, the code inside the observable get executed that many times. So if you have in n number of subscription, n times the code inside your observable get executed. Now is this a really ideal scenario? Let's try to imagine if instead of this math random it was some API call, and if you have a multiple scenarios in your front end application where you are listening to data which is coming from API, and that data you want to use in a multiple pages or the multiple sections of your web page, then if you use an observable, it is really not a good choice because it's going to call that API too many times. To cater the need of the same data to these multiple UI components, you are unnecessarily going to call the API multiple times. So this is the problem with the observable. The reason behind this is observable are unicast by nature. So what does it mean by unicast? Like whenever any new subscription happens on the observable, then the observable get executed that time. So this is what the unicast behavior means. Now to overcome this drawback of the observable, RxJS has provided a new special type of observable which is called subject. So unlike of the observable, subjects are multicast. Multiple listeners subscribe to that subject, it gets executed only once, and the state of execution is maintained. And subject, as you can see in this diagram, subjects pushes the data to a multiple listeners to it in a single go. So that's why all the listeners, all the subscriber gets a same copy of data or the same state of data every time when a subject is subscribed. Okay, so let's see how subject can help us in this scenario. So let's import a subject from RxJs, and this time we are going to do a same stuff, that is getting a random number from the observable, but with the help of subject. So uh, I created a subject using a new subject, and inside a next method, I'm going to set a value to it. So I'm going to put a math.random inside a next, so that value is set, data state has been initialized, and then comes my first subscriber, which will subscribe to the subject, and inside a subscription I'll just simply console log the value that subscription has received. And let's again subscribe with a subscriber 2, and same stuff here, I will just simply print the value. So I made a small mistake. I have subscribed to the subject first, and then I'm setting a value. So this next should go here because the subscription happened before, and there was like the value, when the value was set, there was no subscription happen. So let me rerun it, and when I rerun it, I see that with the observable I had a different values of the random function, but with a subject I get the same value. So this is primarily because subjects are multicast, they emit the same value to all of its subscribers. So this is the difference with a subject. So let's try to understand a subject in a simple language. So subject is the simplest form of the lot. It's like an open channel. It emits values continuously to its subscriber as soon as they arrive, and it doesn't have any memory about the past emission. So if you we just like experience when I set this next to before the subscription happen, that time I don't get any value to my listener, and that is because it doesn't have any memory. So subject don't have any memory, they don't recall like what was the emission happened in a past. And in a coming moment I'm going to talk about the special type of subject which also helps you achieve this, where it recalls a memory. But yeah, subjects are just, you don't have any past memory. So think of the subject as a live TV broadcast. If you are on a time, then you are going to get the broadcast, you are going to see the what is happening, you are going to see the live stream. But if you are late, then you are just simply going to miss it, and you don't have any way to watch it with the help of just pure subject. Remember, there are other types of subject. I will just come to it in a moment, where I'll tell you how we can get access to a previously limited value also. So just to make you aware, there are these three methods that are available with the subject, like the next, error, and complete. With the next, we set a value to the subject. With the error, we can emit the error, and complete basically indicates that the subject has been done with emitting value, and it has completed a stream of data, and now after this no further emission will happen. What will happen in this case is it will give you a value of the 1 and 2 for the first subscription, but for the subscription 2 you will not get a 1 and 2, because the subscription came late in the picture. When the values 1 and 2 was emitted, that time the subscription wasn't existing at all, and when this subscription happened, after that only one emission happened. So the subscriber 1 is going to get 1 and 2, but the subscriber 2 is going to get only 3. So there we go, the subscriber 1 has received 1, 2, and subscriber 2 has received only 3, and subscriber 1 still will receive all the further emission that has happened. So you can see that when 3 was emitted, subscriber 1 also has received. So what if we have to initialize some state of data when we create a subject itself? So for that we can use a behavior subject. So behavior subject, new behavior subject, we can define a type here, and we can initialize the value to this behavior subject. So unlike of the normal subject, behavior subject has the value initialized. I will already have a value inside it, and I don't need to set a value again. So I will just put the value 1 and 2 here, and we'll make a second subscription. So I can see that for the first subscription, the value 0 it picked, which was the initial value, then 1 and 2 were also picked, and for the subscriber 2 it has an initial value which was 2, because the 2 was the recent value that was present in my behavior subject. So that's why subscriber 2 has printed 2, this 3 also. One more thing, if you have to print the value of your behavior subject, if you want to get a value which is present in your subject, not just a behavior subject but any type of subject dot value, and you get access to what is the value which is currently present there. So behavior subject has a memory, it remembers the last value it emit, and it replaces it to any new subscriber before it starts emitting a new value. It's like a TV that shows you a current program, but also that plays the last minutes of your program for the latecomers. Async subject is a type of subject which only emits a value when a complete method is called. So you can think it as of a movie that only reveals the credit when the ending has happened in your story. So async subject works in a similar manner. It gives you a value only when a complete has happened. So in between whatever emit has happened, it doesn't inform its listener about it, and only when a complete is called, that time a subscriber get access to a data state. So let's create a sync subject, and it doesn't have initial value, as you can see here. And when I subscribe to it in my subscriber 1, I'll set a value 1, then I will set a value 2, and then finally I'll make it complete. So let's see what happens this time. So let's run it and see what happens. So when I run it, I see that I get a only value 2, because 2 was the value that was lastly emitted before a complete has happened, and it doesn't have any idea about what were the values that has happened before. So async subject make a sense when you have a stream of data, or the API which or the web socket which gives you a continuous value, and want to keep a state of only a last value. So it's you can use async subject in that scenario. And the last type of subject is a replay subject. So replay subject has been specially designed to provide a data to the listeners which came into a picture lately. It is for the subscription which started listening to the subject lately, and they want access to a previously emitted data. So in that case, replay subject help you achieve that. So applying it to our analogy, we can think it of as a DVR, which allows you to go back and watch like what has happened, to watch the previous episodes also. So let's see a simple example of it. I have a replay subject created, and we have to pass one argument, which is the buffer size. So buffer size means how many previous emission you have to keep it in a buffer. So this basically means that when any new subscription comes, how many of the previous value you want to provide it to your new subscription. And then I have a subscription 2 here. So ideally my subscriber 1 will get access to the all the data that is there, and the subscriber 2, it has joined lately, so it should receive a recent 2 values. So subscriber 1 will get 1 2 3 all the values because it had joined earlier, and the subscriber 2, because we set the buffer size as a 2, so last 2 values will be 3 and 2. So when I run this code, I see that subscriber 1 has 1 2 3, and the subscriber 2 just got 2 and 3. So we can customize this buffer size whatever we want, and this completely depends on your use case, what you are trying to achieve, and how many of the previous emitted data you want to keep there in the buffer. But be careful when you put this buffer size. If it is something huge and you have a lot of data, a complex data object store in it, then your subject will end up storing a lot of data, and it may result in the overall memory performance in your browser. So one more thing, if you call a complete and after that you are trying to emit a value, that will not be provided to the subscribers, because when it completes, when we call a complete, that time a stream of emission is actually completed. It's no longer notifying the subscriber about the newly added data. And I have received a data after 5th, and my subscriber don't have access to 4 because the complete was called. So this is the characteristics of a complete method. If you call a complete, it means a stream of data is completed, and there are no if there are any emission happen, subscriber will not be notified about it. So now we understood that if a subject calls a complete, that push flow stop, and listeners don't get access to the data anymore. But what if a subscriber has to stop that subscription? How it can happen? So for this, let's make a small change in our first code, where in our observable we were setting the value we were setting a value using the random. So this time we'll do the same thing. We will set a random value, but it will be inside our interval. So we see that a value is set after the 2 seconds. So with every 2 seconds a new value is been set, and subscriber has been notified about it. So this is like a continuous stream of the data that listener is receiving. But what if a listener is no longer interested into listening this, and we understood that if we have to stop this stream, then we can call a complete and it will no longer emit a value. But this all happens at the provider side. What if a consumer is no longer interested, and a consumer want to stop listening to this data? How we can do this? So that's where a subscription comes into a picture. So if you see that when we do this observable dot subscribe, it returns a subscription type, as you can see here. So when I did let s equals to this observable, s has the type of subscription. So it means that whenever we subscribe to any subject or the observable, it gives us a special type, which is a subscription. And this subscription type we can utilize to make our consumers stop listening to the stream of data. So let's write a simple use case. So what I want to do is I want to listen to a data emitted by my provider for the only 4 iteration, and after the 5th iteration I want to unsubscribe to that stream of data which I'm getting from the provider. So let s equals to let s equals to a type of subscription which we get from the after subscribing to observable. So s is a type of subscription, and let's create one incrementer which will have a value of 0 initially, and when our observable receive a data, that will simply console log here, and will increment the I, and when the I is equal to 4, that time we will unsubscribe it, and if it is not 4, that time we will simply console log the data. This line is duplicate because line number 12 and this is doing the same, so I'll remove the 12. So with access to subscription object, I can do an unsubscribe here, and you can see here unsubscribe, it tells that disposes the resources held by a subscription, may for instance cancel an ongoing observable execution or cancel any other type of the work that started when the subscription was created. So I'll stop this existing code, and when I run this again with updated code, I see that I have received the first value, second value, third value, and when it has reached to a fourth, it has unsubscribed that, and my listener no longer getting data that has been emitted by the observable. And it's really required, because if it is not done properly, it can cause a memory leakage in your application, and your code will unnecessarily will be consuming a lot of memory space. That's why handling a subscription and subscribing it correctly is encouraged. So that's all in this video. I hope you find this video useful. If you enjoy this video at all, give it a like, and thank you for watching.